what behaviour should I expect to be age appropriate? Age expected. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, the language. The language is really important because for years we talked about normal. What's normal? And we've kind of realised actually normal's quite a big category.
Yes.
And then we moved into appropriate. What's age appropriate? But sometimes the behaviour might be appropriate for that context. If you're, with your mates at school, telling dirty jokes at school, it might be age appropriate or age expected but not appropriate.
Right.
And so just in the last little while we've been probably talking more about what is developmentally age expected. Kind of ties in with your question earlier around do all kids kind of mature, grow at the same age and stage? Well, no, they don't.
Yeah.
We might have a 12-year-old who's gone through puberty, as big as a young man, but functioning as a 5 or 6-year-old. So, but there are guidelines. There are guidelines. There's actually a resource on our website, a wee booklet that kind of goes through what parents and caregivers might expect to be age expected through the ages 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 5 to 7. There's also the Brook traffic lights is another resource. If parents Googled what is age appropriate behaviour, there's a lot of information out there that give you a guide. So thinking of our toddlers, for example, it's not uncommon for our 3 and 4-year-olds to be really fascinated about the world around them, fascinated about poos and wees, fascinated about how people go to the toilet, fascinated about their orifices. And it's about that age that we'll often hear things being put into orifices, which sometimes can be quite scary for a parent.
Yes, that's right.
To think that, oh, we smoke, is this normal? Should I be worried about that? And it's not something that we want to. There's the teaching moment. That bottoms and our vagina are for poos and wees to come out as opposed to for things to be put in, because it might be hurtful or it might, cause some damage. So I don't know that either.
Well, what would be you think about just your age and developmentally expected questions or curiosities that they might have, like, do my privates look the same as your privates? And I just was in a conversation the other day actually with someone who works with us, talking about their children and exploring, well, why do you have that and I don't? And having a little conversation about that. So that's all really age expected. And even some types of touch, like if they're playing mums and dads and they're playing out mum and dad being in bed together, we don't want them in the classroom tucked away under a blanket together. Things tend to happen when that happens, but it's age expected play. And I remember a little boy that we saw had just been to a wedding and was playing things like that out. So I'd say that that's age expected, and the context is there.
Some kids love to be butt naked.
Yes.
We hear of mums sometimes beside themselves and parents and caregivers beside themselves of my wee boy's pulling his penis, seeing how long it stretches. There's a whole lot of normal that we don't have to freak out about.
That's right. I'd say also that there have been a couple of times, even in this last year, where we've got a situation where there's been oral genital contact between two boys, but one of them saw something, just wanted to try it out with a friend. It was a mutual thing. None of them were really upset, but it's working with the parents to then know how to respond to that. But in the absence of any other behavioral issues, trauma, parents who are really onto it and can have these conversations, that's not going to be necessarily a referral to us. again, it really does depend on the whole context and who the children are. Yeah. Swimming in change rooms is definitely a place that we see the spectrum of behavior, from really age expected, checking each other out, to maybe wanting to do a little bit of touch that isn't okay.
And just remembering that children are going to potentially initiate and explore.
Yes.
So
Themselves as well.
that's right.
Yeah.
You know, we often talk about self-soothing with children in terms of touching their own private parts. It's something that sometimes babies and toddlers do, as opposed to masturbation, you know, which often has a bit more of an adolescent or an adult connotation to it. And some parents and caregivers, you know, react quite in huge ways when that happens. That often are quite shaming and telling off of the children. You know, how young is young enough to have those conversations? Well, you know, often this is a question that preschool teachers and kindies ask. You know, we've got kids that are sitting on the mat and they're touching themselves. You know, should we be worried? Well, generally, actually, at that age, no. You know, this is where distraction and redirection sometimes is helpful.
And privates are private. So it's okay to maybe touch your privates, but not on the mat at preschool.
That's right. And as
in
they
front
get,
of everyone else.
That's right. And as they get older, you know, perhaps the conversation then extends, doesn't it, to, you know, that's something that you do in private. But it's always done in a caring, respectful way. I mean, kids have crushes on each other. Kids want to, you know, play all sorts of games. They want to tell dirty jokes, naughty jokes. They want to explore names for genitalia. They're hearing a whole lot of stuff. They're seeing a whole lot of stuff. And I've often asked, you know, well, I've often wondered myself, this criteria of what we put sexualised behaviour in, you know, does that evolve with time, given the context of our digital world and technology? And we're certainly experiencing that children from a much younger age know a lot more,
absolutely,
are exploring a lot more, and alongside that, to just be reminded that not all children do engage in this stuff.
That's right.
You know? Sometimes some kids won't ever engage in sexualised play and behaviour, or they won't ever touch themselves or play with themselves in front of, you know, family at home. Some ask questions, some don't. A real range. I think it becomes a little bit more clear cut as children grow into adolescence. You know, there's but all of that foundational conversation around being safe and being respectful, you know, starts young. Starts early. So that they can have good positive relationships as they grow up.